Well, hello and welcome to the second episode of Past in Review with the History Company. I am your host, Lewis Varnell. And what we want to talk about today is a little bit of the history of the area in the First World War. Camp Thomas, of course, closes in 1898. By 1902, the United States Army has decided to put a permanent installation here next to Chickamauga Battlefield to be named Fort Oglethorpe. And in 1904, the first complement of troops arrived. It continues as an Army training post and an Army base up until the beginning of the First World War, when suddenly the United States Army needs to expand larger than it has been in quite some time. The decision is made to incorporate Chickamauga Battlefield as part of that training ground. And on Chickamauga Battlefield, there will be established three camps. Camp Warden McLean, which was located in the area of the present-day Visitor Center, was then officer training camp. Camp Forest was an engineer camp that was situated at Snodgrass Hill. And then the largest installation was Camp Greenleaf. All United States Army medical training was sent here to this area. So we had surgeons, general practitioners, veterinarians, dentists, ambulance corps, both motorized and horse-drawn, all training on the grounds of Chickamauga Battlefield. Camp Greenleaf ends up occupying a tremendous amount of what we now know as the battlefield. Pretty much any open field that you see today would have had buildings and barracks across it. In fact, the United States Army built around 2,000 buildings and dug 6 miles of trenches to replicate conditions in France. In today's climate at the battlefield, where you are not allowed to dig any sort of hole, it is really amazing to look back on these pictures from Camp Greenleaf, Camp Forest, and Camp Warden McLean. In fact, in this photograph here, this is at present-day Snodgrass Hill. The Snodgrass cabin would be located just to the right of the photograph. There are a row of monuments along the top of this hill, and if you go today, there is a service road that comes down behind the cabin. That service road from 1918 still exists today, and you can see the depth of the trenches that were dug at the base of Snodgrass Hill. In addition, they were trying to develop some trench digging materials, and so the combat engineers were training with more effective ways to excavate the earth. Though that doesn't look particularly effective to me. So when people come in today and they say, this is what those boys saw in 1863, not quite, because the Army had to grade down a lot of these areas, and when the post is closed, they basically go in, throw some dirt in the ditches, throw out some grass seed, and say, close enough. Camp Greenleaf continues in operation, providing the United States Army and the American Expeditionary Forces with just about all of its medical personnel. In 1918, with the ending of the war, the need for Camp Greenleaf goes away. It is shut down over the following months, and finally it is returned to the battlefield proper. All of the buildings are torn down, all of the trenches are filled back in. Fort Oglethorpe, however, continues as a training post and as a cavalry post in the interwar years, and they continue to use Chickamauga Battlefield as a National Guard annual training site and for any overflow training from the various cavalry units that were located at the battlefield. A couple of other artifacts that we have on display here at the museum are two items that, to be quite honest, I'm surprised weren't devoured by moths years ago. And that would be these two pennants, souvenir pennants for the post. Of course, this one, Fort Oglethorpe, 1918, and we also have one for Camp Greenleaf. I will say that it has not been particularly easy to find a lot of Camp Greenleaf artifacts for a post that size. It is surprising how little is out there, though occasionally, and probably what we have more of than anything, are yard-long photographs showing units and showing their encampments and showing them along with the monuments as well. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Past in Review. Come see us.